All right, how's everybody doing today? Hotep, hey, this is Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network, host of the African History Network show. I'm a talk show host, researcher, lecturer, writer, and historian. So it is Tuesday, August 31st, 2022. And I wanted to talk about a story that I did not get a chance to talk about on our Sunday show. A story that I mentioned on Roland Martin Unfiltered today as well. Normally I'm on Fridays, but I got the call to be on today. And this also ties into, this deals with the state of Mississippi. This also ties into some of the history of Mississippi and some of the things you've heard me talk about before when we deal with the Mississippi State Convention of 1890 and the poll taxes and literacy tests that were written into the Mississippi State Constitution to suppress the African American vote. Okay. Also, I'm going to let you know about my new online classes that start up Thursday, September 8th and Tuesday, September 13th, dealing with African American history and African history as well. So if we look at this article, this is a good article from theguardian.com. Okay. Mississippi's Jim Crow era felony voting law is constitutional, federal court rules. Mississippi's Jim Crow era felony voting law is constitutional, federal court rules. Now, this goes back to the Mississippi State Convention of 1890 when they rewrote the state constitution to impose poll taxes, literacy tests, as well as felony voter disenfranchisement laws to suppress the African American vote in a state that was had a majority African American population. Okay, and this is after Reconstruction ends, which was 1865 to 1877. Okay, law passed in 1890 was tailored to exclude the Negro, but appeals court says tweaks in 20th century cleansed discriminatory taint. Tweaks in the 20th century, okay, the 1900s, cleansed the discriminatory taint. Okay, it did not really do that, but it didn't really cleanse the discriminatory taint. But you're dealing with Mississippi. Okay, and this is why it's important to understand the history of Mississippi. And in the class that I'm teaching on Tuesdays, which starts up Tuesday, September 13th, from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968, we get deep into a lot of this history. Okay, so if we look at this article here, this is from August 26, 2022, and this shows us how relevant all this history is. A lot of people think this is ancient history, 1890, 1865, things like that. No, this is relatively recent history, and it still impacts us today. Now, a Jim Crow era provision of the Mississippi Constitution designed to disenfranchise or disfranchise African American voters is constitutional. A federal appellate court ruled on Wednesday. So this would have been Wednesday, August 24th, 2022, the same day as President Joe Biden held his press conference, made his announcements about the student loan forgiveness. Okay, this took place in the same day. Now, the case deals with a provision of Mississippi State Constitution, Section 241 of Mississippi State Constitution, that lays out specific crimes, that cause its citizens to permanently lose the right to vote, Mississippi officials initially adopted the provision at a constitutional convention in 1890, choosing crimes such as theft, arson, embezzlement, and bigamy, that marrying more than one, a man married to more than one woman, and bigamy that they believed were more likely to commit. Okay, that African Americans were more likely to commit. Now, the White County judge who presided over the Mississippi State Convention of 1890. His name was Solomon Saladin Calhoun. You've heard me talk about him before. Solomon Saladin Calhoun. He said, "We came here to exclude the Negro. Nothing short of this will answer. We came here to exclude the Negro. Nothing short of this will answer." All right. So, and what this does is so during Reconstruction, you have about 2,000 African-American men who get elected to public office, 1865 to 1877. This is the period after the U.S. Civil War, which is 1861, 1865. And this is a period that African-Americans are making advancements. We're getting elected to public office. We have African-Americans elected to Congress as well. You have Hiram Rhodes Revels, who becomes a U.S. Senator from Mississippi in 1870. You have the 15th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution that's adopted in 1870 that guarantees the right to vote to African Americans. Okay, there's a lot of resentment from many white people in this country because you have former slaves who are now involved in making laws and voting on laws that then everybody, including white people, have to live by. Okay, and we're going to see a backlash after Reconstruction ends with the Compromise of 1877. We see a backlash during Reconstruction with the political violence that we see, but we're going to see a continued backlash after Reconstruction ends and a reversing of these new rights that African Americans have, and we're going to see an attack on voting rights. Now, a majority of judges on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit did not dispute that the original provision, Section 241 of the Mississippi State Constitution, was racist and unconstitutional. But they said Mississippi had since cleansed the provision of its discriminatory taint by tweaking the provision twice in the 20th century. Now, voters removed burglary from the list of disfranchising crimes in 1950 and added murder and rape to the list in 1968. They removed burglary in 1950 and added murder and rape to the list in 1968. Now, the question that we should really ask is, what does, if you have gone to prison, serve your debt to society, you're released from prison, okay, what does you, why are your voting rights taken away from you? Why can't you vote and you've been released from prison, especially if you're working and you have to pay taxes? Okay, why can't you vote? Now, what's going to happen is that 1870, right around 1870, when the 15th Amendment is ratified, we're going to see Southern states start to impose these felony disenfranchisement laws to attack the new voting rights of African-American men. Okay, and we're going to see this continue, and we're going to see this adopted by many Southern states, especially these former Confederate states, these former states that belong to the Confederacy. All right. Now, we deal with a lot of this. We have two new online classes starting up. One is starting up Saturday. One is starting up Tuesday. One is starting up Thursday, September 8th, 2022. And 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. And we deal with thousands of years of history and what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. And then also we have from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. We have that one starting up. That's going to be on Tuesday. So visit our website, TheAHNHistoryNetwork.com. When you scroll down, we have the information, TheAHNHistoryNetwork.com. You can register for these online classes. Now, there's bonus content you can watch on Thursday, September 1st, 2022, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm going to do a free class preview. You can register for that now. And as soon as you register for the classes, we have discounted. They're on sale $80, regularly $130. There's bonus content that you can watch. Okay. So we'll give you some more information on that. All right. Now, if we go to, I want to go to this article here from Washington Post. And I've talked about this before. If you've seen some of my broadcasts, if you've taken some of my online classes or seen some of our previews, we talked about this before. This is a fantastic article that deals with the Mississippi State Convention of 1890, and it's from the Washington Post, and it deals with this history. There's also a piece from blackpast.org that I'm going to pull up as well, which deals with Section 241 of the Mississippi State Constitution. Okay. And the reason why this history is so important is because this has a big impact on what's taking place, what we see taking place today. The voter suppression laws that we see taking place today have their roots in what happened during Reconstruction and after Reconstruction ended. Okay. It has its roots in this. All right. Now, this article here from the Washington Post. The Mississippi plan to keep blacks from voting in 1890. We came here to exclude the Negro. We came here to exclude the Negro. This is an article from Ronald G. Schaefer, May 1st, 2021 for the Washington Post. And it says, on a hot August day in 1890, delegates gathered at Mississippi's Capitol building in Jackson, Mississippi. Now, Jackson, Mississippi is in the news right now because of the drought, because of the water, the storms that are happening in Jackson, Mississippi, and they don't have safe drinking water in Jackson, Mississippi. Okay, so we talked about this on Roland Martin Unfiltered today. Normally I'm on Fridays, but I was on today on Tuesday, and we talked about this and what Mayor Lumumba is dealing with, how Jackson, Mississippi ran out of water, a crisis that's left thousands of residents with no running water was decades in the making. Now, this is from Vox.com, August 31st, 2022. A lot of this has to do with racism in Jackson, Mississippi, which is 83% African-American, being neglected by the Republican-dominated state legislature, and a lack of investment in funding for the infrastructure, for the water system, but also the white flight that took place. The white flight that took place going back to the 1960s, and the declining tax base as well. So all this is connected to history, okay? And white supremacy and racism is a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race, which comes out of the ideology of European white supremacy. Ideally, infrastructure serves as a shared foundation for economic, environmental, and public health between different neighborhoods and municipalities. However, infrastructure is often poorly maintained or intentionally overlooked in particular places, leading to a lack of access, affordability, and safety for many communities of color. And this also ties into how climate change disproportionately negatively impacts African Americans as well. But the roots of the crisis that we see going on right now in Jackson, Mississippi, the roots of the crisis run much deeper and are inextricably tied to white disinvestment from a majority black city. Inextricably tied to white disinvestment from a majority black city. Jackson's water system, which serves a population that is more than 80% African American, has been burdened with problems for many years, largely because white flight drained the city of resources. The state's Republican-dominated legislature, state Senate and state House, has also failed to provide the majority Democratic city with adequate funding for repairs. And the mayor of Mississippi, Tate Reeves, is a Republican as well. So oftentimes when you have a lack of funding coming from the state and it's a Republican-controlled state legislature, and then you have a Republican governor that has to sign off on a lot of those bills, initiatives, things like this, then African-American mayors get blamed oftentimes for the conditions of their city, for the infrastructure of their city, but it's beyond their control. They're being undermined by what's going on in the state legislature. So you may ask the question, Well, Michael Imhotep, what does this have to do with voting? I'm glad you asked that question. Let's go back to our lead article from theguardian.com, which deals with the felony disenfranchisement, um, disenfranchisement law, which goes back to 1890 in Mississippi. Mississippi's Jim Crow era felony voting law is constitutional federal court rules. Law passed in 1890 was tailored to exclude the Negro, but appeals court says tweaks in 20th century cleansed discriminatory taint. No, it didn't cleanse it. It may make it palatable so you can have some white people who say, hey, we made changes. Hey, it's not racist anymore. But no. Now, majority of judges on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit did not dispute the original provision, that the original provision was racist and unconstitutional. But they said Mississippi had since cleansed the provision of its discriminatory taint by tweaking the provision twice in the 20th century. Voters removed burglary from the list of disfranchising crimes in 1950 and added murder and rape to the list in 1968. Once again, if you served your debt to society and you're working and you pay taxes and can't vote, isn't that taxation without representation? Isn't that taxation without representation? Now, plaintiffs failed to meet their burden of showing that the current version of Section 241 of the Mississippi State Constitution was motivated by discriminatory intent. In addition, Mississippi has conclusively shown that any taint associated with Section 241 has been cured. Now, a majority of justices for the Fifth Circuit, one of the most conservative circuits in the court, benches in the court, wrote this in an opinion. Now, the challengers in the case have said that they plan to appeal the ruling to the U.S. Supreme Court. Now, the decision will allow Mississippi to continue to enforce an extremely harsh policy. This decision from the Fifth Circuit court will allow Mississippi to continue to enforce an extremely harsh policy when it comes to voting rights for those with certain felony convictions. Now, 10% of the state of Mississippi's voting age population cannot vote because of a felony conviction. 10% of Mississippi's voting age population cannot vote because of a felony conviction. Now, this is the highest rate of voting age population in the country that cannot vote. Okay, 10%. Now, and this is according to the Sentencing Project, which is a criminal justice nonprofit organization. Now, check this out. Okay, Jackson, Mississippi, 83% African American. Okay, this includes 16% of the African American voting age population in the state of Mississippi cannot vote because they have a felony conviction. 16% of the African American voting age population in the state of Mississippi cannot vote right now because they have a felony conviction. This goes back to 1890. It's important to understand how we got to where we are today, these laws and policies that have been put in place, so we understand the laws and policies that have to be changed. And the people's history and culture teaches us how to deal with the problems of the past in the present and the future to meet the needs of the community. This is why understanding history is so important. In politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources, and the writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement. This is understanding what politics is. Racism is not calling people racial epithets. Racism has nothing to do with not liking people. Racism is a system of advantage and privilege distributed based upon race, which comes out of the ideology of European white supremacy for the purpose of preserving genetic white survival, especially on a planet that's less than 10% European. Racism occurs when one race of people control the majority of the wealth, power, resources, privileges, benefits, land, access to education, access to opportunity, media, healthcare, education, jobs, etc., and they use this to marginalize, subordinate, and do harm to another race of people. 16% of the African-American voting age population in Mississippi cannot vote because of felony disenfranchisement laws that date back to 1890. Now, the vast majority of people disfranchised in the state of Mississippi have completed their criminal sentence. Now, it is technically possible for someone with a disfranchising crime on their record to get their voting rights back, but the state makes it nearly impossible. The state of Mississippi makes it nearly impossible because they're operating based upon the original purpose of this, which was to target African Americans, okay? And so we can get voted out of office and to suppress the African American vote. To do so, a person with a felony conviction must get both houses of the state legislature. Now, this is how crazy this is, okay? To get your voting rights back after you've served your time in prison, a person with a felony conviction must get both houses of the state legislature, the state senate and the state house, to approve an individualized bill on their behalf by at least a 2/3 majority vote. By at least a 2/3 majority vote. Now, the bill must then be approved by the governor of Mississippi, who's a Republican, Governor Tate Reeves. And before that, it was Bryant, Governor Bryant. I think it was Governor Bryant. Governor Bryant is a relative of Carolyn Dunham Bryant, who was the woman involved in the altercation with Emmett Till that got Emmett Till killed. The former governor of Mississippi is a relative of hers. The bill must then be approved by the governor, current Governor Tate Reeves, Republican, needs to be voted out of office. Hardly anyone has ever succeeded in getting their voting rights back through this arcane process in the state of Mississippi. And it's also important to note, we can't let this tidbit, we can't let this fact get away from us. It's important to note that Mississippi was the state with the most number of lynchings from 1882 to 1968. The state of Mississippi, 581 lynchings, okay, from 1882 to 1968. If we look here at NAACP.org, and when you take my online classes, we get deep into all this type of information. How's everybody doing? Give us a thumbs up, give us a heart, give us a like. We're going to post the information here on the thread of the broadcast. We have 2 new online classes started up in the month of September with class number 1. We have Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school, starting up September 8th, 2022, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We have the information at our website, TheAHNShow.com, TheAHNShow.com. Now, this is at the NAACP's national website, NAACP.org, okay? This is History of Lynching in America, History of Lynching in America. And it deals with the, let me scroll over to this, hold on just a second. It deals with from 1882 to 1968. There were 4,743 recorded lynchings in the United States. Okay, from 1882 to 1968, there were 4,743 recorded lynchings in the U.S. Mississippi had the highest number of lynchings at 581. Georgia was number 2 with 531 lynchings. Texas was number 3, Hingham High, Texas, number 3 with 493 lynchings. Now, lynchings did not occur in every state. There are no recorded lynchings in Arizona, Idaho, Maine, Nevada, South Dakota, Vermont, and Wisconsin, even though there was racism in all those states. African Americans were the primary victims of lynching. 3,446, or about 72% of people lynched were African Americans, but white people were also lynched as well, especially white Republicans, and also Jews were targets of domestic terrorist organizations like the Ku Klux Klan, the Knights of the White Camellia, the Red Shirts, the White League. Okay, some white people were lynched for helping African Americans or for being against lynchings, being anti-lynching. Okay, immigrants from Mexico, China, Australia, and other countries were also lynched. That is true as well. Okay, but the brunt of lynching, 72%, was directed towards African Americans. And Mississippi had the most number of lynchings at 581 from 1882 to 1968. Now, the Dobbs case that basically struck down Roe versus Wade and took away the constitutional protection that women have had for 50 years, going back to 1973, when it deals with constitutionally protected safe abortions. That case comes out of where? Mississippi. That case comes out of Mississippi as well. Okay. And then you have Mississippi also upholding, attacking your ability to be able to vote these people out of office in Mississippi, vote these Republicans out of office in Mississippi as well, with upholding the felony disenfranchisement law, was the section 241 of their state constitution. Now, the decision will allow Mississippi to continue to enforce an extremely harsh policy when it comes to voting rights for those with certain felony convictions. Now, okay, we talked about how crazy it is trying to get your voting rights back. Now, all this deals with voting and who is in office and laws and policies. All this deals with voting, who is in office and laws and policies. And we're going to look here in just a minute. I'm going to go back to the article from the Washington Post and look at what happened at the Mississippi State Convention of 1890. Now, it's a policy that prevents people like Roy Harness, one of the lead plaintiffs in the case, from voting. Roy Harness, an African-American Army veteran who's in his late 60s, cashed a series of bad checks in the 1980s and was convicted of forgery. He spent 2 years in prison, and in recent years, he has focused on his education. He got a bachelor's degree at age 63 and a master's degree in 2019. He said, "It makes me feel bad. I've served my country, nation, got a degree, and I still can't vote. No matter what you do to prove yourself," he told the Guardian publication in 2021. Now, in a dissenting opinion, Judge James Graves, who's an African-American judge, said the tweaks in the 20th century did not cure the discrimination of the original provision of Section 241 in 1890. The tweaks in the 20th century did not cure the discrimination in the original provision in 1890. He said, quote, "The 1968 vote reflects the voters' views only on the addition or subtraction of 3 crimes in the original Section 241 list. The 1968 vote reflects the voters' views only on the addition or subtraction of 3 crimes in the original 241 list. Those votes did not touch in any way the 8 original crimes from 1890 that remain in Section 241 to this day." See, all this deals with history, okay? And what you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. So we have to understand the laws and policies put in place that continue to inflict harm upon us, so we understand these laws and policies to target and get reversed. All this deals with voting. All this deals with voting. All this deals with politics. Now, Judge Graves, who was African American, said the majority had the majority of the judges, in this opinion, had glossed over the blatant racial discrimination, that continued to exist in Mississippi when the amendments were adopted in 1890, and discussed that history in unusually personal terms for a judicial opinion. Quote, recounting Mississippi's history forces me to relive my experiences growing up in the Jim Crow era. While I do not rely on these experiences in deciding this case, I would be less than candid if I did not admit that I recalled them vividly, end quote, he wrote. Now, he wrote about seeing a cross burned. Okay, Judge James Graves, who's an African-American judge. He wrote about seeing a cross burned on his grandmother's lawn in Mississippi in 1963, and seeing the best African-American teachers transferred away from his school after courts ordered desegregation after Brown versus Board of Education, 1954 U.S. Supreme Court case. He also wrote about the lasting presence of the Confederate emblem on the Mississippi state flag. The lasting presence of the Confederate emblem on the Mississippi state flag, which sat beside him on the bench in the courts where he has served. He said, no matter where I went, the 1894 flag, once again tied to history, and this ties to the Civil War, and the Confederate battle flag of Northern Virginia under General Robert E. Lee's army, which people call the Confederate flag. There were 3 flags that flew over the Confederate States from 1861 to 1865, the Confederate States of America. That flag was never one of those flags, okay? That the flag that we see on top of the General Lee car, and what a lot of people think is the Confederate flag, that's the Confederate battle flag of Northern Virginia under General Robert E. Lee's army. And there's a good article from CNN that deals with this history. I've done an entire presentation dealing with the history of the Confederate battle flags, and with the Confederate flags, the 3 different Confederate flags, and then we talk about the Confederate battle flag of Northern Virginia under General Robert E. Lee's army. And also in that presentation, I dealt with monuments, some of the history of the Confederate monuments as well in this country. So that Georgia, that had the second number of lynchings in this country from 1880 to 68, 531 lynchings. Georgia has the largest Confederate monument out of any state in this country. It's called Stone Mountain in Georgia. Okay, this article right here is a good article you can check out from CNN.com. Confederate battle flag separating the myth from facts, from Ben Brumfield, June 24th, 2015. Confederate battle flag separating the myths from facts. Okay, and it goes through and breaks down the history of the 3 Confederate flags also. Okay, it takes you through that history. So check out that article. All right, now, if we go back to this one right here. Okay, how's everybody doing today? Give us a thumbs up, give us a heart, give us a like on this broadcast. How you like this type of information? Be sure to register for the online classes that we have starting up in September. Visit our website, TheAHNShow.com, TheAHNShow.com, because we have the information there. No matter where I went, the 1894 flag was there, a haunting reminder that a wrong never righted touches us all, Judge James Graves wrote. Okay, so check out this article here from theguardian.com. Mississippi's Jim Crow era felony voting law is constitutional. Federal court rules. And this is from August 26, 2022. So this is showing you how this history from after the Civil War, from the Jim Crow era. We're still dealing with this history today. We're still dealing with the ramifications of this today. There was a, let's see, if we go back to the piece here from the Washington Post, the Mississippi Plan to keep blacks from voting in 1890. We came here to exclude the Negro. So that was a direct quote from Solomon Saladin Calhoun, who was the white county judge who presided over the Mississippi State Convention of 1890. He said, "Let's tell the truth if it burst the bottom of the universe." He said, "We came here to exclude the Negro. Nothing short of this will answer." Okay, this is just blatant racism. Now, delegates at the Mississippi State Convention of 1890 eventually adopted a literacy test and poll tax geared to suppress the African-American vote in a state with an African-American majority as a legacy of slavery, in a state with an African-American majority as a legacy of slavery. The Mississippi Plan was what it was called, became the model throughout the South. And this is what other Southern states are going to adopt. South Carolina in 1895. You have Louisiana, 1898. You have Alabama, 1901. They're all going to adopt what Mississippi did to suppress the African-American vote as well. The reason why you needed a 1965 Voting Rights Act, once again, this is all tied to history. The reason why you needed a 1965 Voting Rights Act is because what Florida did in 1889, because Florida was the first state to have poll taxes. And a poll tax meant you had to pay a tax. It could be $2, $3, something like that, to register to vote. Then Mississippi did the same thing in 1890, wrote into their state constitutions, and it gets copied by other former southern states, especially more Confederate states. Okay. And let me see here. Where is this? Yeah. Okay, South Carolina, 1895, Louisiana, 1898, North Carolina, 1900, Alabama and Virginia, 1901, Georgia, 1908, Oklahoma, 1910, and then it continues, okay? This is what they're going to do. You have the U.S. Supreme Court case of Williams versus Mississippi, 1898, where we challenge this in court, okay? This was particularly after, so in the Article 5 Myths About Reconstruction, historian James Lowen, who wrote the book Lies My Teacher Told Me, explains that Mississippi set a precedent for the rest of the South. This was particularly true after the unanimous Supreme Court vote on April 25th, 1898, upholding Mississippi's claim that their constitution was not discriminatory. This was the U.S. Supreme Court case of Williams versus Mississippi, 1898. Quote, every Southern state instituted literacy tests and poll taxes to effectively remove African Americans from the citizenship they were supposed to have been guaranteed by the 14th Amendment of 1868. This can be seen in the state constitutions with similar voter suppression statutes. And they go and talk about the other states that did this after Mississippi. Okay. This is why you needed a Voting Rights Act of 1965 to strike down, to make illegal what these states did in their state constitutions. Okay. So if we go back to this article here, from the Washington Post. Okay, so President Joe Biden and others warn that Jim Crow style disenfranchisement is resurfacing in efforts by Republican legislatures in Georgia, Texas, etc. They're absolutely correct. This article is from 2021, once again, May 1st, 2021. So it's like 3 months after, or 4 months after Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris are sworn into office January 20th, 2020. And you have Senate Bill 202 out of Georgia that gets signed into law by Governor Brian Kemp, and the other voter suppression laws that these other southern states implement, and other states implement, are similar to the one that Georgia did. Okay, and what Georgia did is coming from the the sister organization to the Heritage Foundation, Heritage Act for America. And this goes back to the article that we talked about before from motherjones.com, May 13th, 2021. This one right here. Leaked video, Dark Money Group brags about writing GOP voter suppression bills across the country. This article right here, and this is being funded by dark money, being funded by right-wing organizations to target African Americans, Latinos, Asian Americans, Native Americans, etc. Leaked video, Dark Money Group brags about writing GOP voter suppression bills across the country. We did it quickly and we did it quietly, said Executive Director of Heritage Action for America, this woman right here, Jessica Anderson, who's the Executive Director. So she was recorded in a private meeting speaking to big money donors. And she boasted that her organization had crafted the new voter suppression law in Georgia, Senate Bill 202, and was doing the same thing with similar bills for Republican state legislators across the country. Quote, she said, Jessica Anderson said, in some cases, we actually draft them for them, or we have a sentinel on our behalf give them the model legislation so it has that grassroots from the bottom up type vibe. Now, the Georgia law, Senate Bill 202, had 8 key provisions that Heritage Action for America recommended, okay? And she told the foundation's donors at an April 22nd, 2021 meeting in Tucson, Arizona, in a recording that was obtained by the watchdog group, documented and shared with the publication Mother Jones. Those 8 key provisions included policies severely restricting mail-in drop ballots, preventing election officials from sending absentee ballot request forms to voters, making it easier for partisan workers to monitor the polls, preventing the collection of mail ballots, and restricting the ability of counties to accept donations from nonprofit groups seeking to aid in election administration. Okay. Now, all of these recommendations came straight from Heritage Action for America's list of best practices drafted in February 2021. With Heritage Actions for America's help, Jessica Anderson, their executive director, said Georgia became, quote, the example for the rest of the country. Georgia became the example for the rest of the country for these voter suppression laws. So just as Mississippi in 1890 became the example for the rest of the country, and it became known as the Mississippi Plan, and it was designed to exclude the Negro in 1890. This is exactly what the descendants of these white supremacists are doing today. This all ties into history. It goes back to the Civil War and the Reconstruction era and the Jim Crow era in this country. All this history is relevant. All of this history is relevant. If we look at this piece here from Time Magazine, this article here from time.com, which deals with how the history of Reconstruction is being incorrectly taught in schools across the country. It ties this into the January 6, 2021 insurrection. So you can pull this up here. Hold on just a second. I had it bookmarked. I don't know where it went. Schools are failing to teach. This one right here, a new report finds that, this one right here from Time Magazine, time.com. A new report finds that 45 states are failing to teach students about the period that shaped race relations after the Civil War, the Reconstruction era, 1865 to 1877. This article is from January 12, 2022, 6 days after the, a year and 6 days after the January 6, 2021 insurrection. In the aftermath of the insurrection a year ago at the U.S. Capitol, many leading historians drew parallels between the violence we saw at the U.S. Capitol and the Reconstruction era, the period of political revolution directly following the American Civil War. The events we saw reminded me of the Reconstruction era and the overthrow of Reconstruction, which was often accompanied or accomplished, I should say, by violent assaults on elected officials, said Eric Foner, who's one of the leading historians on the Reconstruction era. He's the author of the book, he's a Pulitzer Prize winning historian and author of the book, Reconstruction, America's Unfinished Revolution, 1863 to 1877. He said this in an interview with the New Yorker magazine, published 1 week after the January 6, 2021 insurrection. Now, scholars say studying the aftermath of the Civil War can help put in context many of the most seminal events in the U.S. in recent years. From the brutal murder of George Floyd by police May 25th, 2020 in Minneapolis, Minnesota, to the voter suppression laws enacted after African Americans, 16.9 million African Americans, played a big role in helping Joe Biden and Kamala Harris be elected president and vice president. There's also 49 million white people who voted for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and 9.7 million Latinos. But despite the timeliness of the era of Reconstruction, in today's climate, many students in American schools will not get a full educational Reconstruction until they get to college. But many of them are not going to go to college, okay? And you have Republicans who are against student loan forgiveness, student loan debt forgiveness. In social studies standards for 45 of 50 states and the District of Columbia, discussion on Reconstruction is either partial or non-existent, according to historians who reviewed how the period is discussed in K through 12 social studies standards for public schools nationwide. Okay, in a report produced by the education nonprofit the Zen Education Project, the study's authors say they are concerned that American children will grow up to be uninformed about a critical period of history that helps explain why full racial equality remains unfulfilled today. All this is tied to history and laws and policies that are still in effect today. This is why we have to understand what happened to understand how to change what's taking place. Okay. All right. So give us a thumbs up, give us a heart, give us a like on this broadcast. And be sure to register for the online history classes we have starting up. We have 2 new classes starting up. Class number 1 of Ancient Kemet, the Moors and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, starts up Thursday, September 8th. It's going to be 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, usually. It's on sale $80, regularly $130. I teach these classes. I'm a study history 30 years. I'm a historian. I put together the curriculum for both of these courses. We do, I do a PowerPoint presentation with book references, articles, video clips. So there's a ton of information that we share in the class. You can do debit card, credit card, click right here to register here. And also 1 hour preview of the online classes on Thursday, September 1st, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Click right here to register for that. Then we have the second class that I teach is From the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. That class starts, class number 1 starts Tuesday, September 13th, 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. It's on sale $80, regularly $130. You can register right now. As soon as you register, there's bonus content that you can start watching right now. We do the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded. You can go back and watch it anytime. So a year from now, 2 years from now, you can watch the entire class. You can watch from around the world. We have a bundle pack where you can register for both classes for $130. Click right here to register for the bundle pack. If you've taken any of my online classes in the past, email me. You can email me through the website. Just click on contact contact the African History Network. You can email me and you'll get a 50% discount. Okay. So we deal with thousands of years of history, what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. And then we also deal with the second class. We deal with the Reconstruction era. We deal with World War I, World War II, Civil Rights Movement, Black Power movement, what leads up to the Civil War taking place. We start in 1803 with the Louisiana Purchase and the Haitian Revolution. And we go throughout history chronologically to understand what happened to us, what were the laws and policies put in place to put us in the predicament that we're in today, to understand where we need to go from here. Okay, so it's over 200 slides that we have in the classes as well, and in both classes over 100 articles. So it's very visual. We have video clips, articles, PowerPoint presentation, all of that information. And we deal with thousands of years of history. We deal with the African presence in the Americas going back at least 51,700 years ago, as Dr. David Imhotep lays out in his book, who's a friend of mine also. I've interviewed him about 13, 14 times. As he lays out in his book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence. We look at numerous archaeological discoveries that have taken place in the last 10 or 15 years. We look at the Khoisan, who have the oldest DNA on the planet, come from Southern Africa, go all around the world. Then they're the ancestors to the Ainu and the Twa. We look at discoveries like Tanis Heraclion, the lost city of Egypt, which dates back to about 8th century BC. And there were major discoveries found at the bottom of the sea off the Egypt's Bay of Abu Qir in 2013. He found 16-foot tall statues documenting more history coming out of ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt. We look at the lost city of Kemet, lost city of Egypt, that came out, that information came out in 2021. Dazzling Aten, and that dates back about 3,400 years ago. Dazzling Aten. We look at books like Golden Age of the Moor, edited by Dr. Ivan Van Sertima. We look at Egypt of the West and how the layout of Washington, D.C. is a copy of the layout of ancient Kemet. And we look at African symbols, like symbols of resurrection, like the Tekken, which comes from the story of Asar, Arset, and Heru. Egypt on the Potomac by Tony Browder is another book that we look at in the class as well. We use as reference. You don't have to buy any of these books to follow along in the class, but we use them as reference. So it's a ton of information that we deal with in the class. These are 8-week online courses. I've gone through and revised some of them, and we incorporated some new information as well. So you'll never look at history the same way. You can register for these right now at our website, TheAHNShow.com, TheAHNShow.com. Also, if you want to pay through Cash App, you can email us also, and we'll let you know. You can send it. You can pay through Cash App. We have our Cash App information on the homepage of our website, TheAfricanHistoryNetwork.com, TheAfricanHistoryNetwork.com. This is our official Cash App account. $ TheAHNShow, SHOW. When you go to it, it says Michael and shows my picture there. You can click right here for the link, and we have our Cash App icon right here, our Cash App barcode. Okay. All right. So you can register for the classes, and we'll see you in class. We have to get out of here. So we have the information here on the thread of the broadcast also. Okay. So you can support us there. You can register for the online classes. You can register for the course bundle pack, and you can use this information with your children. I would say the information is PG-13, so it's not overly vulgar or graphic. I don't do a lot of cursing, things like that. Okay, so you can use it with your children also. All right, remember, right now it's corrects wrong behaviors, not over till we win. Wakanda forever. And we'll see you in class. And also, you can register for the 1-hour free preview that I'm doing as well. Okay. All right. Talk to you next time. Peace.